All right, everybody, we are back again of another episode of the Coach Compass. Now, remember, this is season 6. I just don't know what episode it is. I continue to record, continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. Remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so you can continue to have the same growth, continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. I've got another special guest with me here today. It is Coach Jared. He's the coordinator of sports performance at Wake Forest University, my old school before I transferred up out of there. Coach,
So
thank you, and welcome to the Coach's Compass.
glad to be here. Excited to join, man.
A demon deacon in the house, coach. But you go from the private sector to the collegiate side. Like you go from working the private side, you go to UGA, now you're at Wake Forest. But before you stepped into this role, before you had all the certifications and the titles, what was the form of you that stepped into this coaching world that you were kind of chasing?
Yeah, I think really at the end of the day, regardless of where I was, me being a former athlete, I always had a passion for training and kind of just pushing myself to be better. So being able to be kind of that spark for other people and then kind of relaying that to the kids and athletes that I work with, and whether that was on the private side or during my time interning at UNC or UGA, and then now here at Wake Forest, man, like I'm passionate about kind of getting the best out of the athletes that I'm working with, man, and that just comes from me having that background, growing up kind of being that way, and being able to share that with everybody that I work.
I know we talked a little bit off air. It was like it's an unconventional route, right? Like some people go from studying in school or being an athlete, right? Then they go to being a GA, or they go and then they go into have internship, and then they get a title. But what was it like making that transition from the private sector to now the collegiate side? And you even said you had some internships in there. Like some people don't know the hardships of what it's like to work your way back up the ladder.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but I knew kind of where I wanted to be, and I knew the college setting kind of fit my coaching style and kind of my background. So even having to work my way back up, it was something that was worth investing the time in to do. Just understanding being where I was very fortunate to be at UNC and UGA, very great programs. And I got to learn a lot from a lot of different coaches with a lot of different perspectives that I didn't necessarily get to kind of be exposed to on the private side. Obviously I work for a private program, but most of that is you're kind of on your own, developing your own business, kind of figuring out on the fly, kind of by yourself. So to be in the college setting and be around all these great coaches, man, like it allowed me to grow as a coach and kind of figure out what stuck with me, what worked, what didn't, and then kind of find my voice along the way. It was a perfect route for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky though. It's a little bit tough, right? Because you step into this setting to where you feel like, hey, there's a lot of big dogs in the room, right? Like I just came from the private side. I was working on my own. I didn't really have many people watching what I was doing or overseeing how I programmed and stuff. But now you go into a setting where it's like, shoot, like am I doing the correct thing? So what was it like to kind of go from that, like being on your own, to now having other people overlook your stuff? But also, who were you learning from? Like, who were some of the coaches that you looked up into in the industry that kind of helped you piece this thing together?
Yeah. I mean, I think having the vulnerability to understand like nobody knows everything. And while I may have had this success on the private side, wanting to kind of always continue to grow and be better as a coach, there's no other better route, in my opinion, than to go into the collegiate setting and kind of learn from coaches that have been doing it a really long time, that have kind of seen anything and everything, maybe things you haven't been exposed to. I mean, a lot of the athletes I worked with was more high school side. I did work with some college athletes during my time on the private side. So I got some exposure there, but nothing compared to the day and day of kind of being in that collegiate setting. For me, starting out at UNC, I kind of just they I had a girl actually that I worked with on the private side ended up going there. And so I ended up following a lot of their stuff on social media. And naturally, they're posting about internships, and it popped up, and I was like, you know what? Like, this is something I've always thought about doing. I can see myself in that realm. And so I just kind of like no hesitation. I was like, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to apply for this and see what happens. And luckily enough, I got to work with Coach Nielsen, who is now actually at Auburn with women's tennis. She was kind of my mentor, along with Coach Graber, who worked with women's lacrosse at UNC at the time, as well as Coach Hernandez there at UNC. A lot of really, really good coaches, great personalities that kind of helped me find my footing and kind of grow. And then I ended up starting my grad assistant position at Georgia. So I spent about 3 years there while getting my master's. And I learned a lot from Coach Koch as the director there, and then Coach Hayes and Coach Hummer. So really, like, everybody on staff was open to like dedicating the time to educate me or like continue to help push me. And it also they gave me the freedom a lot of the times to kind of program what I wanted to and give me feedback, obviously, where needed, but a lot of it was, "Hey, like, you program what you need to. We're kind of here if you need the guidance," and then there was a lot of, like, kinda back and forth. There were things that I programmed that they actually might have enjoyed, and again, vice versa, that I was like, "Hey, that really makes sense," and that's something that I can kinda put into my program, and I think that's kind of where this field should be, right? Like, it should be a collaborative approach, right? Because at the end of the day, our goal is just to have the best success for the athletes we're working with.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think that's probably the most dope thing about this industry is coaches working with coaches alongside. Because you named some of the coaches that we've even had on the podcast before, like Coach Hernandez and Coach Hummer, right? And these are guys from two different locations that are actually helping you continue to grow and continue to build for these athletes. Because at the end of the day, like if we're not collaborating, working together, how are we going to help these athletes? But what's a belief that you kind of had when you came into this industry that you no longer like are doing, believing, or anything like that, or some things that you practiced or had in your program, you're like, man, like that's just not even necessary anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just trial and error, and I think, again, being on the private side kinda set me up for a lot of that success when I got here is, a lot of what I was doing was my own programming, and it started right when I was out of college, so, I knew next to nothing in terms of
We
kind of.
just throwing things together, right?
Right, yeah, it's again, trial and error, see what stuck, what didn't, and there is a lot of success along the way, but a lot of failures and a lot of things that you had to learn from, and I think still to this day, there are things that you kind of throw into your program that you might think in your head, "Oh, man, this is gonna be perfect, like, athlete's gonna respond to this well," but, like, understanding that, like, not every athlete and not every person is the same, and they're not gonna respond to things the same way, so being adaptable and being open to, like, being a critic of your own programming, and then again, thinking being in the college setting, having those other coaches around you to kinda also be a outside voice or outside eyes on, "Hey, like, maybe let's try it might be the same exercise, but let's try it this way, let's try a different approach," and, like, so at the end of the day, it's just being open to always evolving and eventually bettering your program for the sake of the athletes.
For sure. I mean, but you've only been in this for a very short period of time. Like we're just honest about it. Like we haven't spent that many years. Like if you talk about some of the other coaches that have been in this for a very long time, but we talk about that grind and that hustle and that time that you put in at the very beginning. What's something that you wish you would have known before you went into the collegiate side that you kind of know now and you're kind of telling a lot of those younger, coaches as they come in?
Yeah, I think, again, not to kinda harp back on the same thing, but I think not wanting to always be perfect, like, understanding that, like, no program's gonna be perfect no matter how you approach it. I think at the end of the day, creating buy-in and creating relationships with the athletes is gonna take you a lot further than, like, trying to develop the perfect program, right? Because it goes back to the classic saying, athletes don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Like, they want to see that you are invested in them, not just as an athlete, but as a person. And I think that's a big part of my coaching philosophy is like just being kind of an outlet for these athletes, like not just a strength coach, but somebody that they feel like they can come into my office and sit down and have uncomfortable conversations and kind of pick my brain about whatever they need to. I think having those relationships and the buy-in goes a lot further than trying to dive deep and develop in the perfect program. Cause again, you're going to have to adapt, especially in this setting. Like you can go, okay, like here we're gonna do X, Y, and Z today. Like we're gonna have a good speed devo day and go right into a lift, and then practice runs a little over, and you only have this amount of
Meeting
time.
with
So
this and
yeah,
gotta go to treatment. I got this, I got that, I gotta get to class. We got practice. Man, there's so many things that go into the college side that are trying to plan out. Like I don't even. Some days I look at like some of the stuff that you guys have programmed, and I'm like, how'd y'all even get to all of it? And
yeah,
then coaches are like, half the stuff we didn't even touch
yeah. And there
because
there
you guys
there
got
are
to jump.
days, yeah, there are days too where like we'll have stuff on our list and we don't even get to some of it. But like, hey, I'll tell the kids we have 45 minutes now. Let's hit our main components for the day. What are our priorities? What's going to kind of help us move the needle that day? As long as we hit those, we can make up on the back end where we need to. But I think just being comfortable having to adapt in situations that you don't necessarily have control over, and kind of giving yourself grace there as a coach. Because I've always, growing up, I was a perfectionist, whether it was playing my sport or whatever it was. And so it was hard to get away from that at times. It's like, man, I really want this to go well today. I have this design exactly how I want it to go. And it's never really the case. So
And that's the toughest part, right? There's some form of perfectionist in all types of athletes, right? Like everyone wants to have things flow correctly, but it's being able to adapt on the fly and making sure that athletes know, like, hey, even in game time, things aren't going to go perfectly. But even if you look at, you take some of the younger coaches that follow you around nowadays. If a young coach were to follow you for a week, what is something that you think they would be surprised about when they look at your coaching style or what you do on a daily basis?
I would say a big thing for me is like I'm not really your hoorah like rah rah guy that is going out there and like
Yeah.
again I work primarily with female athletes now at the college setting, so like a lot of that kind of works in my favor. Like sometimes they don't really need that.
Or they're going to tell you quick too.
Yeah, exactly. And they will find out if you're faking it, right? Like, so I think being genuine in yourself and like being confident and comfortable in the person and coach that you are. So I would say maybe that's the biggest thing is that like I wouldn't say laid back, but I'm like I'm gonna ask a lot out of you and I'm gonna push you because I want the best for you. But at the end of the day, I'm also somebody that can be a support system for you and kind of, is not somebody that you don't feel confident or comfortable going and approaching, right? I want you to feel like, oh man, like I can go talk to this guy at any time about anything. So I guess that's the biggest thing is just I'm very relationship driven, and I think that's more rewarding than any outcome or any, success in the weight room. While all that stuff is great, like at the end of the day, like how many lives did I impact? Did I make this person's day better today? That's kind of my goal and kind of where I'm at from a philosophy standpoint.
Love it. I love it because they're gonna read through it, right? They all know when it's genuine and coming from a real place. Like they're
Especially at
and
this
if you can't
level.
have
They're
yeah,
very
and if they can't have real conversations with you, that's where the buy-in dies out and all that stuff and all this yelling, hooting, hollering. They're not I mean, nowadays, if we look at it, they're not really used to it. It's not the same as it used to be back in the day. Like getting cussed out by a coach, like that's not the thing that drives a lot of these kids, if we're genuinely being honest about it all. But what keeps you staying in this industry and what keeps you motivated, but also how do you stay from getting burnt out, right? It's a new thing like nowadays. Like everybody's like, all the hours that we put in are a lot. Like, and you'd say you from the beginning, you went the unconventional route, right? You went from private sector to the collegiate sector, where collegiate has a lot more hours that you had to put in, to where the private sector you have a little more control of your time. How do you stay fulfilled in this industry?
Yeah, I think my fulfillment again comes from like the impact that I have. Like I got here 2 weeks before the season started. So it was a big transition. And, 2 weeks in, we're traveling to Iowa and like
Boy,
while yeah, it was crazy. Quick turnaround. And as much as I like wanted to see us win, and unfortunately we didn't have the outcomes we wanted that weekend, like at the end of the day, like the most that I remember from that trip is like we were playing Uno in the airport, or like, we're getting texts from like one of the captains, hey, we're playing Uno down in the hotel lobby. You want to come join? So like stuff like that where like I'm impacting their lives more than just like from a performance standpoint, like, that drives me. Like, I love, like, having those end of year conversations and, like, I have a kid tell me, "Hey, like, I reached a level I didn't think I was fully capable before solely because you showed belief in me." Not that, like, you prescribed X amount of weight for me and I hit it that day, but, like, you always, no matter what it was, you had that faith in me as an athlete, and that pushed me more than I ever could, and I think that motivates me every day to kinda show up. And then in terms of, like, work-life balance, I try. I'm not always the best at it, but I try to practice what I preach, and if I tell my athletes, "Hey, on your off day, it's an off day," it's not a active recovery day. It's not, "Oh, I'll go 50% day." It's like remove yourself, find things that you enjoy outside of your training, and for me, outside of work that maybe you do enjoy. And so for me, like, I like lifting on my own, spending time with my family, still try to hoop. I may not be as good as I used to be, but that's an outlet
welcome
for
to the
me.
gang, right? The washed up
Yeah.
athletes, baby.
Yep, I'm 30 now, so joints don't feel the same. Warm-ups are a little
Take
bit
a little
longer.
longer to recover. Yeah.
Yes.
Try not to look like we're at Lifetime Fitness, but yeah.
Exactly. So just again, like trying to practice what I preach, like make sure I fully remove myself. Like once I'm home, I try to not bring work into that environment. Obviously, there's going to be some times where that's not possible, but the more you can try to remove yourself and find things that you enjoy, I think keep you fresh and then coming back that next day or that next week, like even more energized and ready to go.
We try our best to practice what we preach, right? When we say take a complete rest, it's
Yeah,
hard as a coach, right? Because we're always having to be on, and having to flip that switch off is a tricky one. But if you fast forward 10 to 15 years from now, right? And we're talking about outside of coaching, what do you want people to say about Coach Jared? What do you want people to have as a remembrance of you?
it's a great question. I think the biggest thing, again, goes back to impact, whether that's athletes or interns. I love being somebody that can educate. And while I'm still trying to learn myself, like I like being involved in the internship program that we have here and like passing down information that I've learned, like from other coaches, being that same kind of outlet for young and up and coming coaches. Like I find real value and motivation in like being able to talk through my experiences, whether good or bad, and having that be a positive impact and maybe like a growth moment for certain individuals, not just athletes, but again, like young coaches coming in or interns, and saying, "Man, like this person really cared about like my growth as an individual, and not just kind of as like another task, like." Throughout their day, like he genuinely cares about like seeing me grow as a person, I think is the biggest thing.
So if we last thing before we get out of here, you look back at younger Coach Jared self, what's one thing you would tell him today?
I think just have the belief in myself. Like again, coming out of college, like I maybe was hesitant in the coach that I was and was afraid to ask questions and and being in that private side space, it didn't allow for maybe a lot of that collaborative background. But like being comfortable, like not knowing something and reaching out or like feeling like, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z, and not feeling like you have to get through that by yourself and understanding you have other resources outside of, your own space, your own head that like you can use to help better you and be comfortable using that because that's gonna not just help you, but it may even help, that person that's like working with you. And um I think at the end of the day, just having that vulnerability to be okay asking for help and using the resources you have available.
I love it, Coach. Man, Coach, thank you so much for coming on today. Just keeping it real, keeping it honest, and as always, like a lot of you coaches come on here to say, keeping the athlete first. At the end of the day, that's our main goal, that's our main thing, and it's awesome to hear that it's not even just being portrayed on the private side, it's also being portrayed on the collegiate side and moving up to the pro side. So, Coach, thank you so much for your time today, and I can't wait to drop this one.
Absolutely, man. Excited. Glad I could be a part of this. I appreciate the time.
And always go Deeks, baby.
Yes, sir. Go Deeks always.